Welcome, everybody, to the series of Self-Talk. What we're doing is there's things going on up here that, for many of us, are messing with us. And so all locations, hey, fellows at RCMU, everyone at East and West and online, we're going after the fact that maybe something up here or multiple days as we think, that we're kind of off the tracks, that all the anxiety and stress and pressure isn't landing well. And so here's what I want to start off with. It was something I think you've probably heard, at least if you can go back to your childhood. Very common. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Most of us heard this at least on the playground or at school, or maybe you hear it now at work, which is just weird. Okay, just who's heard this, right? Yeah, okay. We've all heard this. That's what. Who thinks it's true? Yeah. That's what I thought. No one, we know that this is perhaps one of the worst lies that we begin to teach right off the bat. And the reason we say it is it's a bit of a defensive tactic. We say it because we don't want to reveal that the opposite is true. In fact, right now, do you remember? I imagine you can at least have a few memories of when words hurt you, when someone said something on purpose, intentionally going after you, or maybe accidental. I remember my family. We moved right after my sophomore year from Indiana to South Carolina, and I didn't take the move all that well. I had been living in Indiana for a while. I loved it. I had some friends that were really close, and it was good. And so we moved to a place that to me was completely just foreign to me. And I went from playing sports and being hyper involved in a lot of things to where it just really didn't make much of an effort when we moved to South Carolina. And I got just sad and retreated quite a bit, played a little bit of sports, but not much, and just stopped being active, stopped just really caring much about anything. And I remember, never forget, my locker was at the end of one of the hallways, right near the exit door, which I liked because I just didn't have many friends and was just really scared. And I remember going to my locker one day and got my books for the next class and packed them up and then just kind of headed to my next class. Head down, kind of like I don't really want to see anybody or do anything. And I remember, and I walked by some kids who were at their lockers. And as I walk by, after I get by, one of them yelled out, calling me, I'll never forget this, the Pillsbury Doughboy. Yeah. I heard it. I didn't act like I heard it. I literally, I knew what they were saying, but I'm just going to keep going, head down, books with me, and I'm going. But as you know, telling you the story. Obviously I heard it and it resonated and it affected me. I remember going to class and stewing about it. I was angry, I was hurt, began to believe it, went home, began to process it more, believe it even more and more and more. I didn't have a good image of myself in my mind. I was not as active, I wasn't in shape anymore, and I began to own that word. I literally owned what they were saying. And it actually began to lead to a decline. I stopped working at a lot of things. My grades going down. In fact, I can tell you that if I could skip school or get away from school or be sick, I was. And school, all of that began to just hurt, just the idea of it. Just from someone who I don't even know who, using their words. And I can tell you that the idea that only sticks and stones can hurt us is a crazy, crazy, horrific lie. In fact, I imagine just my story brings up a story you've got, right? I don't have to ask you to spend a whole lot of time. When did someone not say something? You needed them to say something, you wanted them to say something, but they didn't. Then other times that those words are haunting to you. Okay, when we go after this, because in this series we got to go after this, we got to talk about this, that what are those words doing to you? The Bible gives us tons of wisdom here. The words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. We know this. We know the healing when someone says what they should say, and it literally does something to your mind where it satisfies in a way that you're like, wow, that was powerful for me in a good way. But the recklessness of our words, what's it doing to our minds? There's more. The soothing tongue is a tree of life, but a perverse tongue crushes the spirit. Just consider for a little bit the things you've said, the things that have been said to you, and what that's done. In fact, we can take a conversation about what you might even be expecting. A pastor is talking about words and what we speak, and you might be like, oh, I know where you're going. I know what we're doing. We got to kind of clean up our language. We got to say nicer things. I'm not convinced we all live each day understanding the weight and power of our words. Jesus said a lot of powerful things, but he talked about this. And I tell you this, you must give an account on Judgment Day for every idle word you speak. Just stay here for a moment. You want to reread it? You probably ought to. On Judgment Day, you standing on Judgment Day. And you're like, what are we going to talk about on Judgment Day? Well, according to Jesus, one of the conversations is going to be about your conversations and mine. I don't know what your view is of afterlife, of heaven, of hell, but if you don't understand, if you've not gripped this, if you've not processed this just for a moment, when you are standing with God, it's not about, did you say enough bad things that kind of kept you out of heaven? What I'm saying is it matters to God what you and I say. The word idle, if you're like, well, idle words, what does that mean? It means, in better translation, careless. Lazy. Think of the lazy words. I mean, have you not said something to someone and later I'm like, well, I didn't mean that. I just let my emotions kind of direct the conversation and I said that. That's lazy. That means I didn't guard my words. I was careless about them. According to Jesus himself, you and I are accountable to our lazy words, our careless words. And that's a big deal. You and I know that someone's words mess with us, but oftentimes we don't understand that although there is grace and mercy that is powerful, it doesn't change the fact that what we say is a big deal. Jesus talked more. Then Jesus called to the crowd to come and hear it. Listen. He said, and try to understand, it's not what goes into your mouth that defiles you. You are defiled by the words that come out of your mouth. I mean, we live in a day and age that this resonates to. It did back then. They were so concerned about what you could eat and not eat and all that kind of stuff. And for different reasons, they're religious reasons. But nowadays, we talk about this a lot. We're consumed with what we're ingesting, right? Have you been equally consumed? Have you been equally affected by what you say? Do you process the things that you're about to say, what you're going to speak to another person? And here's what we all know is true according to Jesus, but you have your own even personal experiences. The condition of our mind is often a result, isn't it, of something that was said. Think about, you've got hurts, I do too. You've got things going on in your mind and in your heart that you're processing. And I would tell you that sometimes it's what people have done and not done, right? You get that. But can we just for a moment say, what has been spoken many times has stayed with you, has it not? And perhaps if you look at the condition of inside of you, if you look at like your tension, your anxiety, your stress, what you think about yourself, what you think about others, all of the stuff going on up here where maybe you feel like, David, my mind is not on the tracks. I'm consumed by what's going on up here. This is not healthy. I'm losing the war of my mind. This thing, it's not going well. Well, the condition could be because of what's been spoken. What we speak matters. What we speak matters so much. You know this. Affects your mind. They say that on average 16,000 words come out of our mouths a day. Average lifespan, you and I will say 860 million words. 860 million words. Now, I have a little bit of a soapbox here. I just told you 16,000 words we say. 860. Let me help you understand this. When I say speak, when it's like, hey, speak this, there's a new form of speak, and some of us are thinking, oh, it's just what actually comes out of my mouth. No, a new form of speech is text. You and I can speak things, and not like in Bible time. I'm talking, you and I can speak things, and we can text it on our phone, send an email, and we can be crazy harsh. Have you ever misread a text, an email, where you didn't know the tone? And do you see that they, even experts say this, that we have a tendency that via text to speak more viciously, more harshly. We'll say things that we would never say to a person's face. So here's a cue, here's a tip. If you are unwilling to say it to their face, don't text it to their phone. Don't comment on their social media page. If you can't say it to their face, understand that there is a problem there that maybe you shouldn't send it in text form. But that's my soapbox. That's my, hey, when I say speak, don't be like, oh, it's just what you say. It doesn't matter what you... No, it does. This is a way that we can communicate. So, I think you agree that what we speak matters. How do we begin to make sure that this is, what we're speaking is good? Don't use foul or abusive language. Some of you already feel guilty, and I'm sorry about that. I can't help that. Let everything you say be good and helpful so that your words will be an encouragement to those who hear them. Some of you are so annoyed by this, right? You're like, but I have some jerks in my life. I get this. Here, writing this sermon. There are certain sermons that when I write, I'm excited to share them. And there are some that I just feel like a hypocrite. This is one of those. Because if you think I'm preaching at you, I'm not. Frankly, I'm not overly concerned with whether this sermon resonates with you, because it resonates with me. In fact, if you were to read this in a different version of the Bible, just someone who paraphrased the Bible, Eugene Peterson, catch this. Watch the way you talk. Let nothing foul or dirty come out of your mouth. Say only what helps. Each word a gift. Each word a gift. See, that messes with me. Are your words gifts? Just for a little bit. Some of you are like, yeah, it was a gift of truth to let them know all. No. I'm talking like a good gift that the other person would value and even hold on to. Your mind has been affected by the words that have been spoken to you and the words you have spoken. And in fact, if I were just to circle around the whole part of the sermon that I've even shared with you so far, if I were just to say, let's summarize the whole thing already, let's just go after this. Here's what words deliver peace or poison. That's the kind of gift. When you and I speak, we are bringing that person or that group peace. Or we're bringing poison. And can we admit that we know exactly which one we're delivering? I think many of us, when we talk to our kids, our loved ones, our coworkers, friends, or even our enemies, we've got to understand the weight, and to understand the weight, you got to know what you're speaking. It's either peace or poison. So let's lean into this a little bit more. Peace or poison. What are you speaking to others? Let's peel back the layers. What are you speaking to others? Let's not talk about anything else other than right now. Then what are the words that you have been actually texting others, that you have been literally saying? Let's use the Bible. The Bible will help us. The tongue can bring death or life. Those who love to talk will reap the consequences. The tongue can bring death or life. Death or life? Are you kidding me? Death or life? When you're thinking about the gift that you're giving someone, what you're delivering, death or life. In fact, I've already told you a moment of when it was painful for me, when someone brought death with words to me. Let me flip it. Moments, words that have meant so much to me. One statement: I'm proud of you. Growing up in the home that I grew up in, my mom and my dad, that we had an incredible family. One of the things that was commonly spoken, like very regularly, were words, "I'm proud of you." It wasn't flattery. It wasn't like, hey, we're just saying, no. They would take moments on purpose, that after certain things, in moments, and sometimes just sitting there, they would look, I'm proud of you. It wasn't ever assumed in our family. I remember sitting at the kitchen table. I can picture it right now. Kitchen table family's there, and I remember hearing from my parents, hey, I'm proud of you. And oftentimes it was not after a perfect day, a perfect moment. It was just, I'm proud of you. I can see those as a kid. I can see those. I'm proud of you. Words are powerful. Another one, don't give up. I can give you context because I remember a specific moment where I was told, don't give up. Katie and I were living in Manhattan, Kansas, and I was not a pastor, and through a series of different things in my life, I was wondering, I felt like God wanted me to be a pastor, but no one really wanted me to be a pastor, or a lot of people didn't. I was just struggling with, maybe I can't do this thing that God wants me to do. Maybe you've been there where you felt like, hey, I think God has equipped you to do this or given you the gifts to do this, and you go try to do it, and it's not playing out to the point that maybe you've been there where you're like, I don't know if I should go after this dream of mine anymore. And I got a phone call from a friend. I'll summarize it. He basically said, I felt led by God to call you tonight just to tell you, don't give up. I was on the verge. I imagine that it's likely if I had not received that phone call the next day, I would have had resolved, at least in my mind, that I was going to give up. Don't give up. I'm not sure that I would be with you right now. I'm not sure I would be a pastor. I'm not sure where I would be if someone hadn't spoken the words of life. Don't give up. In our home nowadays, the words "I love you" are a big deal. I don't want you to miss this. See, sometimes some folks are like, hey, I don't say that a whole lot because I don't want to make it, not as powerful. In our home, we've kind of taken an opposite approach. In our home, we say "I love you" a lot. Now, for us, it's often the end of a conversation. But I have walked with so many people who have never heard a significant other, a parent speak "I love you." I mean, I don't know that you'd even be surprised. Like many of us actually we know that perhaps you were not told, I love you, and how that affected you. So now, I got to tell you, honestly, I'm not, every time Katie says, I love you, it still affects me. It still does something to me. And oftentimes, my kids, if I'll maybe drop them off at school or practice or something, and they'll turn around before they close the door and be like, I love you, Dad. Oh, I got to tell you, it has yet to lose its power. I love you. See, words bring life or death, and it affects you. In fact, that actually brings up another layer to this peace or poison. What are you speaking to yourself? I want you to see this. Yeah, we've dealt with others. You know that. That's perhaps where you expect me to go. What are you speaking to yourself? What are you saying up here? Because I don't know. I don't know what you say about yourself up here. I don't know what you process when you go to work or school, or when you're even in a circle of people and you're in a conversation and someone's talking to someone and you're talking. I don't know what you're thinking. You don't know what I'm thinking. But here's what I do know. You're thinking something, and you are saying something oftentimes to yourself. Scientists say the person that you and I talk to the most is ourselves. And let me steal a phrase. What you say can be used against you or for you. Ever think about that? Probably you have in moments and glimpses, but I want you to stay there for a little bit. Do you understand that whatever you're telling yourself about yourself, that is resonating with you, and that is doing something to your mind? What you say can be used against you or for you. In fact, there's an example. There's a guy who lived years ago. He's known as King David. If you've ever heard the story of David and Goliath, the kid who had a slingshot and rocks and he killed a giant. Many of us have even heard of this or read books about it. And that David grew up and became king. Well, in his whole process of becoming king and living life, he obviously had some enemies through the whole process. And he found himself in moments where, he was so discouraged. People wanted to do things to him and was wrestling in his mind, going like, you've been there where you've been like crazy stressed out. Things are going on. So you begin to talk to yourself and you begin to go like, what do I do? What do I do? And maybe say some things, own some things about you. Well, this happened to David. And David was greatly distressed. For the people spoke of stoning him, killing him, because all the people were bitter in soul, each for his sons and daughters. But David strengthened himself in the Lord, his God. Strengthened himself in his Lord. Now, let me be nerdy for you, okay? There are different translations that say that David encouraged himself. He didn't get... He didn't get a text from someone. He didn't see a post on Instagram. He didn't get a letter. He didn't have someone come up and be like, hey, I know you're down and you're stressed, and I want to speak some good things. No, he actually spoke to himself encouragement. In essence, you're either a helpful coach or a dangerous critic to yourself. I wonder which one you are, because it matters. It matters on the outside. Just think about the people who have been helpful to you and dangerous to you. You yourself, the conversations going up here that you're having, you're either just criticizing yourself over and over and over and over again, or you're coaching yourself and becoming a great coach, going, you could do it. Here's what I've seen. When you and I begin to buy some lies and tell ourselves, let me use an example. If you begin to tell yourself over and over, I'm ugly, I'm ugly. I'm not as good looking. People don't like me. You begin to just say it over and over. What will happen is you will stop taking care of yourself. Because if you are your worst critic, if you are a dangerous critic to yourself, you're going to begin to buy those lies of, I'm ugly. Or maybe that's not maybe in your head you constantly tell yourself, I'm stupid. I even hear some people say it about themselves out loud. I'm stupid. I'm an idiot. I'm dumb. We'll lie to ourselves and say, well, I don't really believe that. I'm just saying that because I kind of had an oops moment or whatever. No, I think you actually do. I think there's a bit of it that you're owning. And if you're criticizing yourself saying, I'm stupid, well, what I know will happen is you'll eventually just own that you feel stupid and you'll stop wanting to learn anything. And you will, in fact, become not near as aware and knowledgeable as you ought to be. Maybe the worst one, maybe you actually tell yourself, I'm not enough. I'm not valuable. You know a lot of people who do that. I am not valuable. And if you begin to tell yourself over and over again, if you criticize yourself that way, there will be moments, and they will happen more and more, where you'll begin to just search for your value because you will believe what you have told yourself. And you'll try to find your value in other things and people, and it will not go well. You're either a helpful coach or a very, very dangerous critic of yourself. Do you know what God has said about you? I mean, there's a big, giant book called the Bible. Powerful. And in that big book, there are tons and tons of things God has said about you. I'll give you a short list. Do you know that God has actually said you are worthy? He's actually said that about you. Do you know that he's actually said that you are loved? He loves you. Multiple places he says you are valuable. In multiple places he has actually said you are his. I'm not sure that we've all owned this. God has spoken that about you. God has actually spoken that about you. And do you understand what plays out when God speaks? I hope you do. Okay, if you were to just read the beginning of the Bible, maybe you're not familiar with the Bible. Maybe you're like, I haven't picked it up much. But I wonder if you've heard about the beginning of the Bible, where it talks about that God created the heavens and the earth, right? Most of us, we've heard that at least. Do you know that how it actually spells it out? That God said, and God said, and God said, and God said. God said, I want there to be mountains, and there was mountains. God said, I want there to be oceans, and there were oceans. God said, I want there to be animals, and there were animals. I want there to be this, and he spoke it. God, when he created, didn't go to a workshop and use tools. When God created what you and I are in awe of, if you ever look at the stars, if you ever look at the mountains and the oceans, if you are ever appreciating creation at all, and you're like, this is amazing, God spoke it into existence. So when God speaks, the power of his words can create. So his words have extreme power. And he says you are worthy. He spoke you are loved. He spoke you are valuable. You are his. If you wrestle in your mind being your worst critic or perhaps a critic of others, if you are not a good coach encouraging others, or yourself, let God's words define your words. God's words are so powerful. You and I ought to take those words and let them come into our lives. In fact, I would say you and I ought to dwell on this more. You and I ought to take the words that God has spoken about you and I and anyone and everyone and put it in front of us. Some of you, right, you're like, what do I do with this sermon about guarding what I say and what's said to me? What do I do? Perhaps some of us, we just need to put God's words in front of us more often. Maybe that's subscribing to a reading plan on a Bible app that begins just to tell you about you and remind you of what God said. Maybe you write them on your mirrors, your bathroom mirrors, or in your car. You put them up in front of you. These words are powerful. And it affects your mind. In fact, let me show you those words I said. This is true about you. Even if someone way a long time ago in elementary school or at work or your parents said or a boyfriend or girlfriend said or an enemy said, this is what is really true about you. And if God spoke it, which he did, that means it has the power to create a renewed, fresh mind in you. So I want to pray for you, but I want to pray this over you. So would you bow your heads, close your eyes? I just want to lead us in a time with God because God's words are powerful. Just for a little bit, I want you to talk to God and dwell and let him. Maybe you don't even talk. Maybe you just let him talk to you. The fact that he thinks you are worthy, just right now, just with your eyes closed, your heads bowed. You are worthy according to God. Let that resonate with you. God said you are loved. Just for a little bit now, just quietly. Let God help you understand that. You are loved by God. God said you are valuable. Just focus with him. Let him help you own that. You are valuable. I don't know if you've ever received this, but God says you are his creation. If you've never accepted that, maybe in this moment you would tell God, I accept, I believe that I am yours. God, I think we all know that we should speak life and not death, that we should speak peace and not poison. God, I think we have been taught as kids that what we say, what we speak, what it matters. And God, I apologize. I am sorry, and I think we all are, of the moments that we've neglected that truth and we have spoken things that are toxic to ourselves and to others. God, this week, help us to bring life to others and even to ourselves. God, would you prompt us on things of peace to speak? And I pray that this week will be full of a different kind of talk, a talk that brings life to anyone and everyone around us. God, we love you. Thank you for speaking this place into existence. Thank you for speaking your love for us. We accept it. And we pray this in the name of Jesus. Amen.